Yes, good afternoon, Ms Bridget.
May it please the Commission. Commissioners, our first witness today is James Carter Geercke, and he will be giving lived experience evidence. Before the Associate administers the affirmation, Commissioners, I note that Mr Geercke's testimony may trigger or cause some distress to those who may be listening and who have experiences of suicide behaviours, self-harm, violence and other forms of abuse, and drug and alcohol misuse. I say this now to give people an opportunity to not listen to the evidence or watch it if they so wish. For those who do wish to listen and find the evidence difficult, there will be numbers displayed on the screen where people can seek help.
Thank you.
Mr Geercke is in the witness box and can now be administered the affirmation.
Mr. James Geercke, do you solemnly declare and affirm that the evidence you shall give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Can you please tell the Commission your full name?
James Carter Geercke.
You made a statement to the Commission signed and dated 25th of November 2022, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And there were two versions of your statement, a redacted and an unredacted version, is that correct?
Yes.
Operator, please display JPG.000, it's already displayed, _R. This is your redacted statement that is displayed there. Do you recognise that as the front cover of your statement?
Yes, I do.
And operator, please scroll to the last page of the statement. And there are 32 pages to your statement, is that correct?
Yes.
And are the contents of your statement true and correct?
Yes.
Commissioners, I tender the redacted statement of James Carter Geercke, signed and dated 25th of November 2022 as a public exhibit.
Thank you, Ms Bridget. It will be accepted and allocated the next number then.
Commissioners, I tender the unredacted statement as a confidential exhibit.
Thank you. Again, it will be accepted on that basis and allocated the next number.
Mr Geercke, you're giving evidence to the Royal Commission today about your experiences of your time at the Australian Defence Force Academy, commonly known as ADFA, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And you are giving evidence of how the culture and the training environment and the training itself within ADFA and the Army impacted on your well-being and those around you in ADFA at the time, is that correct?
Yes.
And that includes your experiences of suicide behaviours and self-harm, is that correct?
Yes.
If at any time you would like to take a break during your evidence, please do let me know. And you are here today with your mother, Jennifer, and your brother, Cameron, to support you. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
You applied to join the Australian Army in 2008, is that correct?
Yes.
And we can see here some photos that are now being displayed of your time in the Army. How old were you when you applied to join the Army?
18.
And you commenced at ADFA. I'm just going to use the term ADFA from now on. You commenced ADFA in 2009, is that correct?
Yes.
And how old were you then? Were you still 18? Or?
Yes, 18 years old.
And can you recall what interested you in applying to join the Army?
I was always interested and fascinated with the military and soldiers. Ever since I was a child, I was running around playing dress-up soldiers. Ever since I could draw, I was drawing pictures of soldiers. My granddad served. We were always going to every Anzac Day, to all the marches, and it's that stuck with me all throughout my years and schooling, and that led me down that path to the military. Yep.
And what did your mother think about you joining the Army?
She had very mixed feelings about it. It wasn't definitely not her first choice of a career path for myself. She had a lot of concerns and was very worried, but she did support my decision, and she was supportive of me through my applications and very supportive during my time in the military.
And did you consider ADFA or know anything about ADFA before you sent through your application to the Army?
No, I just applied to the regular army, but I scored very high in the aptitude test, and the recruiters convinced me that if I have the ability, that I should at least apply for the selection to the officer training at ADFA. And so I decided to follow through with that, and I passed and was accepted down there.
And you give evidence in your statement at paragraph 10 that you did not think you would pass the selection tests. Why did you think that at the time?
All the other candidates were from like much higher levels of schooling than I was. High level private schools, they had their school uniforms on during the selection, and they were much more educated than I was. They already had lots of leadership experience, which I had none of, and I just felt intimidated by them all and did not expect that I would be in the same caliber as those the other candidates.
And you refer to an open day that you attended, and your mother Jennifer attended that open day as well. Can you tell the commissioners what that open day was like for you?
Yeah, it's very, they really sell it to you there. They've got all the coolest equipment out on display. They've got planes flying around. They've got attack dogs doing demonstrations. They've got people doing fire drills. They sell it to the parents as well. They say, we're going to have no hex debt. We're going to be, leapfrogged in our careers. We're going to excel. We're going to get such a high level of training that'll be valued beyond the military into any career we would pursue afterwards. And they make it very, very appealing. And as soon as I went to that open day, I definitely wanted to go there straight away.
And did anybody speak to you on that open day about some of the challenges or some of the difficulties that you might face?
No, not at the open day.
And at paragraph 14 of your statement, you say that you knew when you were applying to join ADFA that it was competitive. How did you know this at the time?
They said that they have, such a high number of applicants. They said they had over 10,000 applicants and less than 400 spots. So that's very competitive.
And in what way was it competitive? Can you expand a little bit about the competitive nature?
So when we go for selection, you do various testing over 5 days. They do physical testing, some intellectual testing, complex problem solving, all that sort of thing, and you will sort of get, ranked and the best get chosen to go through. So you are competing with the other candidates.
And did everyone in your intake succeed?
No.
So how many, in percentage-wise, got through?
About half.
And you mentioned the physical testing and any other testing that you had to undertake. So you mentioned some of the problem solving. Was there any other testing?
Yeah, they would do things like give you a topic and then say, give us a 2-minute speech on the spot like that. They might make you do some debating, all sorts of sort of fast thinking, fast problem solving, things like that. And then, they might say, oh, tell us a speech about your hero or something like that. And they wouldn't really give you a full heads up on what was coming up. It was all sort of on the spot. So you didn't have a sort of program you could plan and prepare for. You sort of had to, you had to do it all, sort of testing your abilities, not your knowledge sort of base. Yeah.
And did anyone at that time raise concerns about your physical fitness or the condition of your body at that time of when they did the testing?
No, not at all.
And you say you were perfectly healthy in paragraph 16, is that right?
Yes.
Had anybody ever told you at that point that there was anything wrong with your body physically?
No, I passed all my medical testing with flying colours.
And can you recall how you felt about being accepted into ADFA?
I was very surprised and very proud and excited.
And it was in 2009 that you moved to ADFA. Can you explain, for those who may not know, what is ADFA and how does it fit in with the Army?
Yes, so ADFA It's attached to Duntroon, so it's right next to RMC. It's sort of like a separate campus. And at ADFA, we do tri-service training with Army, Navy, and Air Force all together. So we do some classes together, and then we will also separate and do individual single service training. And we will do all our university classes at ADFA on the campus there. We also live there, so we live and train in the same environment.
And you were studying a bachelor's degree, is
Yes.
that right? And what was your bachelor's degree in?
I was majoring in history and politics.
And can you recall how many service years you had to commit to?
9 years total.
And what did you think about that at the time?
I thought that was a long time, but it did make sense. The Army was spending a lot of time and money to train me and educate me, and they would want that return on their investment in years of service.
And were you given any opportunity to leave? Was there a period before you had to fully commit to those 9 years? Or
Yeah, we have a 2-year grace period in which we can leave without any repercussions, and that's to sort of compensate for the long service that we sign up to at a young age. People may realise that this may not be for them, and that is a grace period that we can leave.
And when you say repercussions, what are the repercussions once you get over that 2 years?
Some people that left after, they tried to make them repay the cost of their training, which was several $100,000.
Would you have been able to afford that?
No.
And what were you undertaking in terms of the military training? How did that work in with your course? With your studies is what I mean. So how did that work?
So yeah, we would usually have twice a week for 6-hour blocks. We would have military training, and that would be around our university timetables. So we would be off to classes, and then quite often in those blocks would be off to military training. Quite often in the morning between 6, 7, 8 a.m. before uni would start, we would have military classes or some military physical training, a shooting test, something like that. Roughly about 1 weekend a month we would be training as well. And for twice a year, for 1 month blocks, we would go off for Army training with the Royal Military College, Army specific training.
And that's what you meant by RMC before,
Yes.
Royal Military College. And what was it like juggling full-time academic studies and doing the military training?
It was really full on. It was very stressful. They often didn't coordinate very well. Sometimes we would be up doing a 12K cross-country run and then straight into some uni exams. That made things really difficult because if you failed any classes, you could be charged. So there was a lot of stress all the time trying to juggle some really poorly coordinated timetables.
When you say charged, what does that mean?
So it's in our standard operating procedures to pass all our classes. So if you don't pass, you can be charged with disobeying a lawful general order, as that's in our standard operating procedures.
And what would that mean in terms of your service, or what does that look like in practice?
So usually it would just be an infringement, which is a lesser charge that only stays on your record for 12 months, and you would cop something like lose a day's pay, lose a weekend of leave, or you could get a restriction of privileges charges where they can make you do anything that they deem fit. You can be sweeping up the rain or doing something like that.
And you've given some evidence in paragraphs 21 to 27. I'm going to ask you some questions about this with respect to the training environment at ADFA. Can you describe what the training environment was like when you were there?
It was very tough and strict when I was there. So I joined in 2009. The wars in the Middle East were sort of at their peak. Osama bin Laden hadn't been found yet, and it was very intense at that period. Already from my first year to my third year, I could see they were easing up a little bit on the newer recruits, but for us it was very tough.
And the training at ADFA, you say, comprises of military leadership training. You've mentioned that about the tri-service. What else was can you describe more about the training environment within ADFA?
Yeah, what do you mean specifically?
In paragraph 25, you say that a lot of people at ADFA were stressed. Can you talk about some of that?
Yeah, everyone was stressed out all the time. People were we were pushed to our limits constantly for a very long time. You know, we're there for several years, and that's a long time to be in a very demanding, high demanding environment, and under these really strict rules. You know, your bosses could stop you at any point, pull out a ruler, and if your name badge was off by, you know, a millimeter even, you could cop a charge for that. They could stop you and charge you for having dust on the bottom of your shoes or dirt on the bottom of your shoe. Just ridiculous things like that just made you carry around a certain level of stress constantly, on top of all the pressure to perform well in all your academic studies and keep performing in all your military testing and classes as well.
And how old on average were the trainees in the group that you were in?
The majority would have been 20 or younger, a couple maybe 21 or 22. I think everyone would have been under 25.
And you've talked about that you were required to do the military training. How often were you required to do the military training in a year, for example? How often would you be required to be doing the military training for the Army?
The Army-specific training, it was roughly 2 months of the year.
And can you tell the commissioners about what that Army training is like?
Yes, so it usually comprises of 2 phases. You would have a sort of barracks phase where you would learn different lessons about field work or weapon systems, radios, so on, and then you would have a field practical phase where you would go out into the field and practice all those, all the things you'd basically just learned in the classwork in the barracks.
And operator, if you could display paragraph 28 of Mr. Geercke's redacted statement. You say a lot of the Army training is like the movies. Can you tell the commissioners what you mean by that?
Yeah, well, a lot of people told me, the Army's not like the movies, but then I got there and when they start screaming at you and swearing at you and all the rest of it, that's pretty much exactly like you see in the movies, in the training anyway. And
you say at paragraph 29 that gave you a high level of stress, is that right?
Yeah.
And you talk about the punishment and punishing the whole class. Can you expand on that a little?
Yeah, very often we would all be punished for one person's mistake, and that just created a lot of sort of stress and anxiety for that particular person, but it also was hard on everyone, you know. Yeah, it's...
Do you recall being charged for not complying with any of the procedures or the rules?
Oh, all the time. It was a constant thing, being charged. No, I don't think anyone got through there without any charges.
And what's that like when that happens? I mean, can you recall how you felt at the time when that happens?
Yeah, it sucks, but it's kind of part of it. I guess it's normalized. You know, you can tell when a boss is going to charge you. If they want to charge you for something, they can find something and they can give you a charge. That you can never be perfect enough that they won't find anything that they can't charge you with.
And in paragraph 30, you say, I remember one time I was charged for not keeping my room clean enough because I had dust inside a light bulb.
Yes, that's correct.
And what happened as a result of that?
I lost the weekend's leave.
And does that get put on your record as well?
That stays on for 12 months. So these smaller infringements will stay on your record for 12 months. And the more you have within that 12 months, the worse the punishments will get. But after the 12 months, they will get removed off and the punishments won't keep stacking in severity.
And do you think that that kind of training is necessary, or do you think the Army can train people to go to war without treating trainees in this way, for example, swearing at them or adopting a punitive approach?
I would say it was very excessive. It may be necessary to some degree, but it's not necessary to that degree.
And you give evidence at paragraph 3 about how you think what the Army should focus on in terms of mistakes. Can you tell the commissioners about that?
Yeah, well, they're trying to hold us to a standard that's not achievable, and when you keep getting punished for things that you can't achieve, it does start to have a very negative effect on your mental health.
And did it have an impact on your mental health?
Oh, very much so.
Sorry, did you say very much so?
Yes.
And I'll come back to that in due course, Mr. Geercke. At paragraphs 34, apologies, I will just go back in terms of the impact on the mental health. And you said it's being regularly punished for not doing something that is unachievable affects your mental health. Can you explain what you mean by unachievable?
Yeah, quite often we could get two bosses might give us a separate task each, and it's not possible to do them both. So whichever task you do, the other one won't be done. You're going to cop a charge. Things like, when they give you a room inspection, pull off a light bulb and you've got dust inside, pull off the air vent, got dust inside your air vents. These things aren't achievable for us to constantly have all this stuff clean on top of everything else we're already trying to juggle. So they do just sort of throw these curveballs at you all the time that they know you haven't got, they haven't told you to clean the dust out of your air vent, but then they'll go and check it and punish you for it, for the dust being there. That's just one example, but there's, things along those lines are pretty constant.
Do you think there was a purpose behind trying to give you things that are not achievable?
Yeah, I think the purpose behind it is along the lines of never trying to say you're perfect, so you stop trying to improve, which I think is a good thing. We should always be trying to improve, but the way that they've gone about that, I think, is not very effective. You can see the way that it has affected us is not, it's done more harm than good.
Thank you. And at paragraphs 34 and 35, you refer to the instructors telling you about a study that the Army completed with recruits. Can you tell the commissioners what you were told about that study and why you think you were told about it?
Yeah, so when we were starting our Army training, the recruiters told, well, not recruiters, our instructors told us about a study they'd done on recruits in the 1990s that showed that almost 100% of them were showing mild symptoms of PTSD by the end of their 3-month basic training here at Wagga Wagga. And they explained to us that that happens because when they put us through this intense training, it can have similar effects on the brain as taking psychedelic substances such as LSD. So when you keep people awake with food and sleep deprivation for several days, things start to happen in your brain. You can start to see things that aren't there, hear things that aren't there. And the brain in that state becomes more plastic and malleable. It can physically change. And as they put us into these harsher conditions, our brains are going to start to adapt to them, and it's going to turn us into more effective soldiers, able to operate in different environments. But they said a side effect of this is PTSD. Those changes that happen in the brain are going to cause things like PTSD, and that soon we're going to start experiencing various symptoms. We're going to start seeing behaviours amongst our colleagues that are going to seem irrational and illogical. And we were told that we must be aware of this. We also must be aware of it for our soldiers because they can't go up in front of psych testing because they'll get a psychological discharge, and we were to look out for each other and sort it out amongst ourselves and do everything we can to keep any incidents of severe mental health becoming on their desk. So keep it all under the carpet, avoid it from coming to the surface on their desk so they don't have to deal with it. No one has to get a psych discharge.
And all of that was told to you?
Yes.
And in paragraph 34, you say that it was clear that they being the army, were well aware of the problem but swept it under the carpet, and there was no strategy in place to deal with the issue.
That's correct.
And how did they sweep it under the carpet?
Well, for one, they don't really offer much support to anyone. If everyone's getting PTSD, but they're not treating it, that's sort of, to me, that's just sweeping it under the carpet. For people who go for help, they get severely disadvantaged career-wise or possibly psychologically discharged. There's also a massive stigma about it. Everyone is just sort of, just man up and deal with it. It's nothing serious. The seriousness of it is very much downplayed.
And in terms of not talking about it and the automatic psychological discharge from the military that you refer to in your evidence, do you think this creates a culture of silence?
Very much so.
And you give some evidence in paragraph 36 and about taking the effects of taking a psychedelic substance like LSD, and that's what the effect would be like. Is that what they told you, or did you also do some research to find out that that's what it was like?
They told me that. They told us that. I did some research later on to find out, what was happening to my brain and how I could maybe try and fix a little bit of it or reverse what was sort of done to me. But yes, they said it's like taking psychedelic substances. They said the extreme being in an extreme circumstance has the same effect on the brain as psychedelics. It's the same mechanism that activates.
And can you recall, and I know it's a little bit of time ago, but can you recall what you were thinking or feeling at the time when you were being told about these potential side effects of the training?
Yeah, it did sort of make sense at the time. It did seem like, okay, these things happen. I didn't think anything would be happening to me. I actually didn't think anything was wrong with me for a long time. I thought, well, I never went to war. That's not going to be me. I'm not in that category. And we're also at the time we're being smashed with such hectic timetables. You don't have a lot of time to really stop and reflect too much on what's happening. And a lot of these behaviours and things are just getting normalised.
And at paragraph 40, you give evidence about what the training at Duntroon was like, and you say it was even more gruelling than at ADFA. Can you describe what some of that training was like? It's at paragraphs 40 to 44.
Yeah, so at RMC, that's when we do more intense training. We do things like the food and sleep deprivation exercises and, a lot of heavy pack marching. We'll carry packs that are 50 kilos for a week or two at a time for several kilometres, 10, 20, 30 kilometres a day sometimes. We'll do... Yeah, all that sort of stuff. We'll sleep in harsh weather conditions with very limited shelter and other things like that.
And did you have any incidents happen to you with the harsh weather that you can recall?
Yeah, I once had to sleep in -6 degrees. I had to break the ice off my sleeping bag to get it back in my pack. That's probably the coldest night I've ever had.
And in terms of 43, you say it was common for mild hallucinations to occur during training?
During the food and sleep deprivation, yeah, very common.
And what would happen in those hallucinations?
You might hear your phone ringing when you haven't got your phone on you. Definitely at night, shadows and stuff. You might think, oh, that was an animal when that wasn't. Or some people say they saw little men marching beside them and such things like that.
And did you experience mild hallucinations?
Yeah, commonly.
Had you ever experienced hallucinations before joining ADFA?
No.
Can you recall what that was like at the time?
Yeah, it's sort of, you understand what's happening to you, so it's not a shock. You're feeling very exhausted, you haven't slept, you haven't been eating properly, you've been marching all day, all night. your body's starting to hit its limits, and your mind's also starting to hit its limits as well.
And you say we were all going through it together, so you persevere to get through it as a team.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I could have ever done any of these things individually by myself, but yeah, you are there as a team and you all get each other through it, and you do sort of, bond and support each other and you get through it together, yeah.
And you say that if you wanted to put yourself into the mindset of a soldier or a veteran, you can imagine, and then you go on to give that evidence. Can you tell commissioners what you've written there in your statement in terms of if someone wanted to get into the mindset, what would that be like?
If you're trying to picture, what's happening to our brains, you could imagine taking some psychedelics and then being forced into uncomfortable, stressful situations repeatedly. It's probably going to have a similar effect on the brain than to what has happened to us during this training.
You touched on this briefly a moment ago, Mr. Geercke, about the effects happening before deployments. And in paragraph 45, you talk about the roots of mental health trauma being experienced before deployments. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, before all these things I'm describing, this is happening at the very beginning of our training. I can only imagine for however many years you stay in the military, that just gets worse. And any type of deployments or any actual traumatic experiences you see there would be amplified limitlessly by further beyond what I experienced in training.
Do you think there's a perception, and if you don't know, that's okay, do you think there's a perception in the general population that people in the military who get PTSD, that only happens to people who go to war or go on deployments?
I would say so, yeah. I thought that myself for many years as well.
And your experience has shown you otherwise?
Yes, that's true.
I'm going to ask you some questions about the evidence you give about the suicides and the self-harm at ADFA, and just remind you not to mention any names or go into any of the methods, and only to the extent that you want to share this with the commissioners. Can I please start with your evidence at paragraph 46, where you talk about the suicides that you became aware of or observed? I'm not sure the details of that, but can you talk about some of the suicides at ADFA?
Yeah, so the first suicide was within a couple of weeks of me being there, and I just thought at first that this was probably an isolated incident and didn't think too much of it. I mean, yeah, it was very sad and it wasn't pleasant news, but I didn't think too much of it at the time, and then every year preceding that, there was another suicide. So these weren't sort of isolated incidents, but they were regular occurrences.
And how old were these people?
All would have been under 25, I would say 18, 19, 20.
And operator, if you could display paragraph 47. You describe there the personalities, if you like, of some of the cadets or trainees. Mm-hmm. Can you tell the commissioners about that?
Yeah, so, these were some of the youngest, brightest, most, driven, intelligent, promising people that the country had to offer, and they all had the option to leave at the time. This, we're not locked in to our contracts from the very beginning. All these people had the option to leave, but they all took their own lives, and I do see that as a sign of some severe mental trauma. I don't think that any of them, their lives hadn't gone wrong yet. They hadn't had any logical reason. It seemed very illogical that they would choose to take their own life over leaving and living a different one.
And you've touched on this about thinking, initially you thought it might have been an isolated incident, But what was it that changed your mind to think that it was more regular? What was happening?
We started seeing a lot of self-harm. It was very, very common. And you start to see everyone's mental health slowly deteriorate. Yeah, and then, they do keep happening. Every year there was a suicide, at least one.
And at paragraph 50, you talk about what would happen after the suicide.
Yeah, so we would all get called in for like a suicide prevention training, which was just largely tokenistic. They would get us into the big hall, show us the same slideshow every time, tell us not to talk to the media, and they did advise us to go and talk to the chaplains if we were struggling, because they didn't have the same lines of reporting. You can talk to them, anonymously, in a sort of confession style. They don't have to do the same protocols of reporting that the psychs do. But yeah, if you weren't really religious, that wasn't really something that non-religious people sort of even considered at all.
And why do you think you were told not to talk to the media about it?
At the time, we were told their media team was going to do anything to do with the media, and for us not to engage with any media at all.
Do you think that contributes to the culture of silence?
Yeah.
And moving to your evidence around self-harm or suicide attempts, can you tell the commissioners about what you experienced and what you observed?
I'd been, in the room when one of my friends really tried to kill himself. Another one of my friends just dived headfirst. No, it always went unreported. I had to first aid those friends myself, make sure they got to work the next day so they wouldn't be in hospital and there wouldn't be any report, and none of it would get to our bosses.
And could you feel that you could report it?
I felt I would be doing them a disservice if I reported it. They would have a lot to answer for, and they would most likely be discharged.
And given that you didn't report it, can I assume that you didn't get any support for what you had to do at that time?
No, our only support was each other.
In paragraph 55, you say, we became one big dysfunctional family. What do you mean by that?
Everyone did look after each other sort of like a family, even if they didn't get on. You could see someone you really didn't like. If they needed help, you would always help them. And it was very dysfunctional. We all had so many different problems. That's sort of how I would word it, one big dysfunctional family.
So how is it that people who are going through their own individual issues, how could you all support each other?
We just did the best that we could, and obviously it had very mixed results. The statistics do speak for themselves. It was not a very effective way of handling things.
You refer to indirect self-harm, and you say that was common. Can you just explain what you mean by indirect self-harm?
Dangerous behaviours, drinking way too much, drink driving. One of my best friends got his spine broken very badly in a drink driving accident. The passenger in that car was killed. There's lots of, drinking, violence, and people just losing their minds, snapping, having a bit of psychotic episodes, maybe punching the wall, headbutting the wall, things that didn't really make much logical sense. Things I would say more signs of severe mental trauma.
And drinking alcohol, what did you observe about the amounts of drinking alcohol and the reasons why people were drinking?
The alcohol consumption was very excessive and common. A lot of people drinking to excess every day. And yeah, it was, it was a huge problem. It was, yeah.
And do you know some of the reasons in terms of talking to your fellow cadets why people were drinking to the excess?
I guess everyone has their own different reasons, but it was a coping mechanism through all the stresses, through all the the hard work, the things happening that you don't understand. You start having different sort of nightmares. You find it hard to relax. When you walk outside and a boss can just pull you up and charge you for anything, you start to not feel relaxed even when you go outside. You're hyper aware all the time. You can't wind down. It's like we've been wound up so much to this point that we can't unwind ourselves, and alcohol was a way to do that.
And I know that you've spoken about the stress and the demands. In your statement, you refer to the fear of failure. Can you speak to that a little bit more?
Yeah, I think a lot of people had a big fear of failure. I think that's why many really tried to push themselves and not quit when it wasn't working out for them. You also had reprisals for failure. If you failed a drill test or failed a uni exam, you would get a notice to show cause in which you had to submit a document with listing reasons why you shouldn't be immediately discharged from the military to your bosses. So things like that were common, and it just added to the stress of everything. So if you failed, you often weren't supported to get better. You had to give reasons why you shouldn't be punished.
And did you have any thoughts of self-harm or have suicidal ideation at this time when you were at ADFA?
No, I didn't, but I definitely had irrationally dangerous behaviours.
And to the extent that you want to, can you describe what some of those dangerously irrational behaviours were?
Yeah, mostly related to drinking, drink driving, violence.
And again, did you seek any help for this at the time?
No.
And the reason for not seeking help was?
Fear of reprisals and fear of being discharged, of hurting my future career prospects, and no one asked for help. It was sort of not a thing that you did. People would sort of look at you sideways, oh, you're asking for help, like, oh, can't you handle your alcohol or something along those lines.
And were you seeing this within your first year at ADFA, these behaviours?
Yeah.
And you were experiencing them yourself within the first year?
Yes.
And in 2010, just moving on to a new topic now, in 2010, did anything significant occur during your training for you?
Yeah, that's when I had my spinal injury.
And can you tell the commissioners what happened with your injury, how it happened?
Yes, so I was out on a field training exercise, carrying the heavy packs, weighing up to 50 kilos, and I'd had, they think, a minor injury in my back that I should have caused me to stop, but I didn't, and I kept pushing on for 4 more days, and during that time, 7 discs in my spine became disfigured and crushed, and that's how my injury occurred, yeah.
And what happened to you at day 4? You talk about something that happened to you at day 4 in your statement. What was that?
Yeah, so that's when I basically had become very delusional. It was very difficult to breathe. When I breathed in and my lungs pushed on my spine, I had a really intense stabbing pain, so I was becoming very short of breath, very lightheaded. I felt dizzy. I could hear a big droning sound like a jet plane was flying right above my head. And I had wandered off into the bush alone, and luckily one of my colleagues had spotted me, break away from formation and wander off, came and grabbed me, took my pack off and said, "You're done, you're going out of here, you're getting out of here."
And what happened after that?
After getting the pack off, I could catch my breath a bit, I could walk just fine, but obviously I could not continue the exercise, and I was then forced into a stretcher, and my team was made to carry me to the nearest road, which was several kilometres away, and that was very uncomfortable. It's very difficult to carry someone in a stretcher. They also had to carry my pack, so one person was carrying their 50-kilo pack plus mine. And I kept asking, can I get out of the stretcher and just walk? Every time they went over a log or a bush, it was banging into my back. It was very painful. They didn't want to carry me. I didn't want to be carried, but I was forced to go through that. They were forced to inflict that on me.
And did you experience or observe any abusive behaviour during these these field trainings that you had to undertake?
Yeah.
And they were by various senior people above you, or by recruits, trainees themselves?
Mostly by staff.
When you say staff, people are ranked above
Yes.
you. And did you repeatedly request to be taken off the stretcher and so you could walk?
Yes. I was told to shut the fuck up and stop complaining.
And how much pain were you in, Mr. Geercke?
Incredible, indescribable amount of pain.
And what was the psychological impact, if any, on you?
Well, that pain that started then never stopped. So that's had a huge toll on me physically and mentally till this day.
Do you still experience that pain today?
Yes, right, as if it's happening to me right now.
And what happened once you were brought back on the stretcher?
I was then put in a truck and taken to the hospital at RMC. I was given some painkillers, had an overnight stay, and was discharged from the hospital. I was given a script of tramadol to take. I was told as my body started healing, the pain would lessen and lessen, and by the time the healing process in the body finished, even if I wasn't 100%, the pain would be stopped and I wouldn't have to take the medications anymore, or that medication anymore.
And was your mother notified that you were in hospital?
No, and she was my next of kin, so my next of kin was not notified at all of what had happened.
And were you given any diagnosis by any of the doctors that saw you when you were admitted into hospital?
Not at that stage.
And what treatment did you receive during that admission?
I saw the physio in the morning and they gave me some restrictions, so no pack marching and things like that, no extreme forms of training, and then I was sent to resume duties, or the rest of my duties as normal.
And did you see a number of doctors during that admission?
I really don't recall that in that first admission.
And what did they take you for scans, or did you get any treatment? That was your first admission into hospital?
Yeah, first admission, no, there were no scans. I just saw the physio after an overnight stay in the morning and then was discharged after the physio.
So it was a one-night stay
Yes.
on that first admission. And then what happened after that first admission?
So as I left, I kept taking the painkillers as I was prescribed, which in the military, a doctor's prescription is a lawful general order, so you do have to take them. If you're told to take your meds and go back to work, you have to. So that's what I did. I returned to the doctor maybe 3 or 4 days later saying, this pain's not going away, it's still quite intense. And then they increased my dosage and I went back to work, and that just repeated for a couple of weeks until my dosage of tramadol was up to 2 grams a day. So I started on 50 micrograms a day, ended up on 2 grams a day, collapsed in the shower with severe abdominal cramping. I went back to the doctor and told him about what had happened. He said, your dose of the tramadol is too high, so he took it off. He reduced the dose and introduced a series of other painkillers, Lyrica, Cymbalta, fentanyl, Valium. I was taking all these in combination with the original tramadol within the next couple of weeks after my initial injury.
And operator, please display paragraph 81 of the redacted statement. You list here some of the prescribed medications.
Yeah.
Can you tell the commissioners about these, and were you given all of these to be told to take at the same time, or?
Yeah, I was taking all of those medications simultaneously in combination.
And what were the medications meant to do?
They were trying to control my pain. They didn't understand why my pain wasn't going down. They just kept stacking on new meds to try and deal with it. And yeah, I really didn't question what they were thinking at the time. I just had trust and faith in these doctors, and I thought, oh, the doctor says it's good, it must be good. And so I didn't really think too much of it until I started having, some pretty serious side effects from all this stuff.
And were you allowed to not take the medication?
Well, it is a lawful general order, so if you would have to get the doctor to take you off it. You couldn't just, if it was prescribed to you, you're not allowed to just take it. I don't know if I really feel that I would have been charged, but it does exist.
And can you describe the hospital that you were in terms of the
Yes.
facilities available?
So after I was taking these for a few months, I ended up back in the hospital at RMC, which is not really designed for comfort. They don't want people in there and lingering. They're not paying you to be in a comfy bed. So the hospital has no TVs in the room. There's no visitors during working hours, so it means your friends can only visit you on the weekends. The food's really crap. The boxes that the food comes in says prison and defence use only. It's just designed for discomfort, and I ended up staying in that hospital for 3 months.
And this was around May or June 2011,
the
is
following
that correct?
year. Yeah.
And was your mother informed of your second admission?
No.
And can I assume then that your mother didn't get to visit you while you were in hospital?
She did come to visit after about a month and a half. She just said, well, you've been in there for a while, I'm going to come and visit you. So yeah, she came down, and she had no idea the seriousness of the condition that I was in. And blood from all these painkillers, and I was not in a very good way. And no one told her what had happened or what was happening to me.
And did anybody in the first let's say at the first admission, did anybody say, would you like us to contact your next of kin?
No.
Did they ask you that in the second admission?
No.
And in the second admission, were you given any diagnosis by any of the doctors that saw you?
Yeah, I was misdiagnosed with a number of conditions. At first, they said I had a condition called ankylosing spondylitis, which is when the vertebrae in your spine begin fusing together, and that was what must be causing all my pain. So that turned out to be incorrect, so I was being mistreated for that. They also said I was also diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, and I was told I'd be in a wheelchair within a year, and that was causing all my pain. That turned out to be incorrect as well. No one ever thought it may just be a chronic pain condition resulting from that initial injury. They all thought this much pain, there must be something else going on. That injury happened months ago, the body shouldn't still be experiencing that pain. And they were sort of on this path to find something else that wasn't there, and in the meantime they were just dumping more and more meds into my system, into my body.
And what treatment did you receive at this point in the second admission?
They were sending me to various treatments. A lot of them, I was seeing physio, deep tissue massage, bone scans, MRIs, CT scans. They even had me going to hypnotherapy. They had me going to acupuncture. I was getting these needles put in my back and then electrocuted, and all sorts of all sorts of treatments. Basically, they just were anything that might fix me. They would just send me off to everything. It was going round in circles.
Apologies. And did that include medical specialists as well?
Yes.
And was any of that treatment working?
No. I got some temporary relief, but nothing that was lasting, or nothing that was, that was improving my condition. So I would get a bit of relief for a couple of hours after the treatments, but I would be just right back to square one a couple of hours later. Nothing was sort of improving my condition over time.
And you talk about how you were feeling at this point at paragraphs 98 and 99. Can you tell the commissioners what the experience in that second admission was like for you?
Yeah, I'll just read from my statement here. So I spent many painful months awake at night, staring at the roof completely alone, and I began to lose my mind. There was a 2-week period during my hospital stay where everyone else was sent home, but I was not permitted to go and leave. I was completely alone, being the only patient in the entire hospital. I'd walk around the empty rooms endlessly night after night as I was unable to sleep, wondering how my world had been reduced to these empty rooms and corridors. I had nothing else to occupy my mind but my own distorted thoughts for the majority of the time.
Mr. Geercke, it sounds like that was an extremely difficult time for you. Did you have any support, apart from your mother, which obviously would have been a great support, but did you have any other support at this time?
I had 3 visits from friends that went AWOL to visit me, and that was it.
What do you mean they went AWOL?
Absent without leave. So they had skipped class to come and see me.
So they wouldn't have been permitted to come and see you?
They would have been charged if they got caught.
And you talk about how you could feel your body beginning to fail and that you knew that soon you would be dying. Is that how you felt at the time?
Yeah, when I had blood coming out from where it's not supposed to, that was when I really started to think that I was dying.
And then what did you do after that?
I decided that I wanted to leave the hospital and get off all these meds. I didn't want to stay in there waiting around to die, not getting better. So I went and told the doctor that was my intention, and after some convincing, he agreed to write off all the scripts so I wouldn't be charged. And he suggested that I don't quit all these medications immediately, as they're going to have some very severe withdrawal side effects. So I left that hospital and I stopped taking all the meds immediately except the fentanyl. I slowly reduced it over the 3 days. And then after that, the withdrawal symptoms were so severe, I just remember waking up back in the hospital that I'd left.
And when you left the hospital, so before at the time you self-discharged, what did you leave with in terms of medications?
So the doctor wrote me 10 repeats of every script that I was taking. As he said, DVA are going to be pretty slow accepting your claim, excluding the fentanyl, so every other script. So that was over 1,000 pain pills I left in my bag from that hospital.
And you got that prescription filled?
Immediately by the pharmacy.
By the pharmacy? Mm-hmm. And they filled every one of those scripts?
Every one of the repeats, yeah.
And to the extent that you want to, can you tell the commissioners what you went through in terms of the withdrawal symptoms?
Yeah, it's a bit hard to find the words to describe what that was like. Firstly, my pain had been masked by a number of really powerful meds for a long time. So when that hit back, it was very intense. That stabbing pain returned when I tried to breathe. Then I remember feeling incredibly hungry, like my stomach was cramping so much, like I just had to eat. But as soon as I put any food in my mouth, I would just start vomiting violently, which was causing more spasms for my back and further pain. At the same time, I was having hot, cold flushes. Like I would be freezing and shivering, and the shivering would make my pain worse. I would put the blanket on, then I would just start pouring out sweat. Then I would be starving, put something in my mouth, throw up, and there was just a lot just going on all at once. And I would end up losing 12 kilos in that 5 days. And that 5 days I was back in hospital with the withdrawals. And yeah, I'm not like a really, really big guy, so that was a lot of my body weight that went off.
And where were you doing that? What room were you in?
At the same hospital.
Before you went into hospital. So when you self-discharged, were you in your room at ATFA?
I went back home.
Oh, you went back home.
Back
so
home
you were
to
at
Sydney
home with...
yeah, it was on a Friday. I went home for the weekend. But on the Sunday night, or on the Sunday before I'd gotten back to my room, I was back in that hospital before the Monday morning already, yeah.
And was your mother with you while you were going through that withdrawal?
Through the beginning of it, yeah.
And then you go back and have a third admission to hospital, is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
And is there anything you'd like to say about that third admission into hospital?
All I can say is like I really have problems being anywhere near hospital now. Anything that's hospital-like, nursing homes, doctor's office. Immediately when I go into any hospital-like environment, my heart starts pounding. I start pouring out sweat. I feel like I'm in danger. I do not feel safe. I feel like I need to get outside of the building, and that has caused problems throughout my life. For me personally, every time I need to go to hospital, it's a real ordeal, and I have trouble visiting people when they're sick in hospital, and that's hard to deal with because that's something that I would like to be able to do.
And so this has been a long-term effect or impact for you from
Very
this
much so.
experience? And in terms of the side effects of some of the medications, what have they been like for you? What side effects did you encounter, and have you had any long-term effects of that?
They did affect me for a long time. It took a very long time for my appetite to come back. I wasn't eating normally for a very long time. My sleep cycle was way out. When I was on all these meds, I was sort of awake for 18 hours and asleep for 18 hours. And that took a really, really long time to get any sort of normality back to my sleep. I had to finish my uni degree when I came out of the hospital, but my brain really wasn't working properly. I sort of developed a kind of dyslexia. I couldn't read properly. I couldn't think properly. So there was a lot of challenges for several months afterwards. Some big challenges ahead, yeah.
And what about your sleep and dream patterns? Has there been any impact or effect on that?
The way I sleep and dream has been affected a lot since I had the injury in the beginning. So now my dreams are really completely bound by reality, in a sense that when I dream, everything is how it is in reality. Everything looks the same, sounds the same. When I touch things, they feel the same. And they feel more like memories than not feeling like dreams. And when I get hurt in a dream, I feel that pain as if it happened to me. In a sleep assessment that was done, when they plug all the brain monitoring equipment onto your head, they said my brain's still receiving pain signals in my sleep, and that's not normal. The sleep is one of the body's most effective pain relief mechanisms. So when you are still experiencing pain throughout your whole sleep, your brain is a bit more active, and it's a bit more. It's not drifting off to where it should be, and it's staying in a different place.
Commissioners, I note the time. I do have a few more questions for Mr. Geercke, and I note that, Commissioners, you may have some questions as well. May I seek an indulgence to continue?
Yeah, I think that's fine. Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioners. Did you manage to complete your degree?
Yes, I did.
And what about graduation? Did you graduate? We can see there now a photo. Is that you on your graduation day?
Yes, it is.
And that must have been a good day for you, was it?
It was. It was a good day that I had achieved, completing my degree after missing the 3 months of classes in hospital. I had to catch up 3 months worth of assessments plus finish the remainder of my degree with all those challenges that I had. But it was also a difficult day as I was being discharged the next day. So I wasn't able to participate in any of the marching out parades. I wasn't permitted to wear my uniform. I had to hand them all back. So yeah, I was the only one in the class dressed in civilian attire at our army graduation ball. I wasn't permitted to wear the dining in uniforms or anything like that. So it was a difficult day at the same time. Yeah.
So this is a uniform that you had right up until graduation, is that right?
Yes.
So why is it that you were not permitted to wear your uniform?
I had to hand them back that day.
So you didn't have a uniform, or did they say because you had not completed the army training?
Both. It was both. So I was not permitted because I was being discharged, and I also didn't have the uniforms. I had to give them back on that day as well.
Can you recall what that was like for you or for your family, that you were not permitted to wear your uniform that day?
Yeah, it was mixed feelings. I mean, it was good that I was there and that I had stuck it through and I did finish the degree. But then at the same time, it was hard to not be included to the degree that that I could have been.
And you spoke earlier about the dangerously irrational behaviours that you engaged with. The Royal Commission is also interested to learn about any protective factors. Was there anything for you when you were going through some of those difficult times that prevented you from perhaps going, deteriorating even further in terms of your mental health?
Yeah, the friends and family support is definitely probably the biggest one. Well, that was my biggest support, was coming from my friends willing to take risks, skipping class and risking their own charges just to visit me. And the family support was just incredible. I mean, they had to help me pick up all these pieces and overcome a lot of challenges that were to lie ahead after all this. If I wasn't going home to that really supportive family environment, I definitely think my outcomes would have been much different.
And then you're medically discharged on the 11th of December 2011, is that correct?
That's correct.
And can you recall how you felt about being medically discharged?
Again, it was a bunch of mixed feelings. I was anxious about what to do next. At the time, I didn't know how confident I was to adjust and live with all this pain and stay off all these medications that I'd been struggling with. I knew I wouldn't be able to do the job I wanted to do in the army with my injury, but at the same time, I never wanted to have any kind of hospital experience like that again. So I didn't want to stay in the military. I didn't ever want to be in a position where I would end up like that, being treated like that again.
Had the healthcare system been of a better quality while you were there, would that have changed how you think about whether or not you'd stay?
I don't think I ever would have been in the hospital in the first place with that second admission, with all those painkillers, if my treatment had been better in the first place.
And do you recall receiving any advice at the time at the time of your discharge, regarding a transfer of your healthcare to external providers at all?
No.
And did you end up seeking any help for your mental health after you were discharged?
Not for several years.
Why not?
When I was discharged from the army, a couple officers sat me down, had a serious talk with me, saying that I would really have to, I should really try to avoid an official diagnosis of any mental health from DVA, as it may really affect my ability to go back to work. And because that system is so slow and cumbersome, it's a system that a lot of people go into and don't come back out the other side from. They both had known people that went into that DVA ecosystem with some mental health problems and never came out of it. So for that reason, I thought I would just have to, move on, get another job, put this all in the past, and hopefully the difficulties I was experiencing would begin to settle down once I could move forward.
And was that your experience? And
No,
what was not your experience?
that I would be able to move forward and things would settle down.
Yes, and your experience with DVA, we won't have the time to discuss that in detail, and it's in your statement, but was your experience with DVA positive or a negative experience?
Horrifically negative.
And you discharged in 2011. When did you, or if you have at all, return to the workforce?
DVA did permit me to return to the workforce until 2016.
And was that in an area that you were interested in?
No, they put me into security work, which caused much further problems to my physical condition and return to using these painkillers.
And what year did you end up seeking help for your mental health?
It was, I think, maybe 2013, 2014, around that time, where after not being able to work for several years, I'd started to deteriorate mentally quite severely.
And were DVA helping you at that point while you were deteriorating?
Very limited support I was receiving. I was receiving very limited support.
And did you get the right help in 2013? Psychological help?
No, I was advised quite irresponsibly. I was having lots of substance abuse issues. I was mixing alcohol with my painkillers and MDMA tablets, and it was getting out of control. So we went to a therapist that we thought would be able to help me without getting anything back to DVA. And the therapist just asked me if I ever hurt myself when I take these substances. I said no, they make me feel good when I take them. And then they said, do you ever hurt other people when you take the substances? And I said, well, no, they make me more sociable. They don't make me, I get on with people better when I take them. And they said, well, you're not actually struggling, you're doing really good. And you should just keep using everything just as you are. And as long as you don't hurt yourself or hurt anyone else, you're not struggling, you're doing well. And we don't need a follow-up appointment.
And what year was it when you, I'll withdraw that, did you go back and get any help after that?
Not for several more years.
So what year was it that you got help?
I didn't get the right help that I needed until 2019.
And can you tell the commissioners what that right help looked like and why it was right for you?
Yeah, so I'd been to several sort of, after that first therapist I had seen, I did eventually get some help through DVA. Everyone they sent me to was not helpful at all. They all kept trying to prescribe me antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds, and I just kept saying, like, these aren't going to fix my problem. I don't want to swap one pill problem for another. What happens when I want to stop taking these meds and all my problems are still there? Do I just keep taking them with ever increasing dosages till I end up back in the hospital? So I kept bouncing in and out of that sort of mental health thing with DVA. Eventually in 2019, a close friend of mine recommended me a therapist who works outside of spent more than $10,000 on that, but it did work, and that was what I needed.
And when you were in the workforce, in your statement, you talk about some of the challenges that you faced about being in the workforce,
Mm-hmm.
and you talk about the behaviour and what the behaviour you learnt in the army. Can you just say something about that?
Yeah, I mean, there's one problem I had was I didn't know what a HR department was because there's no HR in the army, so I was just swearing at work like we always do it in the military. Then I got called into HR and I got in a lot of trouble, and had no idea why. It didn't make any sense to me. And there's all sorts of things like that you just don't really understand. That the military is very, very different to any other workplace, and we're not really, upon our discharge, we're not really told or given anything. I mean, I got given a brochure and a couple of websites to visit on the day of my discharge, and then that was it. It just sent off on my own. So there was a whole lot of things I didn't understand. I didn't really understand what was happening to me mentally. I'm struggling with a lot of different other things, and all those little things, they do start to stack up and make you feel a bit more alone and isolated, and you feel like people don't understand you, they don't get you, and you feel like you can't reconnect. Like these are barriers to you reconnecting with society, which put up sort of roadblocks to you healing and moving forward.
And you say that the Army reward dangerous behaviour. What do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, the way your brain works in the Army, like that sort of risk-reward thing, is geared a certain way in the military. You have to take risks. It's a dangerous job. Even the way that they award medals for bravery and things like that, which is good for that purpose. But then once you leave the Army, you can't be viewing the world in that way. You do these risky, dangerous behaviours in the Army, but you've got this incredible, this dysfunctional family support network. Like anyone will help you out. If you drink too much, even if someone that does not like you sees you passed out, they will get you home. When you leave the Army, you don't have that anymore. But your brain is still craving these really risky behaviours. You still go and you chase them, but you're not in the same environment, and the risks are much more. You can do a lot more damage to yourself outside than you really could when you're in there with the support around you constantly.
Did you find yourself doing any dangerous or bizarre behaviours?
Very often.
Can you tell the commissioners one or two of those?
Yeah, a couple of times I had, last thing I remember is having a beer at the pub, and then I would wake up, in another state I passed out alongside my car on the side of the highway with the keys locked inside and no idea how I'd gotten there, where I was going or why I was driving there. That's things like that had happened to me several times. Even just the amount of substances that I was mixing together in all these cocktails of just trying to find some peace of mind, or the amount I was drinking to just black out so I wouldn't have these very real nightmares, things along those lines.
And were you also self-medicating, if I can use that word, for your pain relief?
Yes.
And it took, you talk about how it took a decade to transition from being a military member to a civilian, to civilian career. Do you think that's acceptable, that it takes that long to transition?
No, I don't think it's necessary. I think that can be avoidable with better treatments and supports.
And you've made a number of recommendations from paragraphs 212 to 219. And I'll ask the operator to display those. Would you like to speak to any particular of those recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, they're all pretty self-explanatory. The issue of PTSD, especially if they've got some scientific data saying that we're all getting it from the beginning, we should probably be getting some sort of treatments for it since the beginning. I don't think having PTSD is such a necessarily bad thing. I think the stigma does more damage than the condition itself. Serving members should be informed of different medication options and have some choice over what they're putting into their bodies. They shouldn't just be getting prescribed a whole cocktail of meds, not even told what they are, and then being forced to take them and just march off back to work. I definitely don't think multiple opioids should be prescribed at the same time. And all my repeats, they were with a 1 month supply of each repeat. I definitely don't think you should be giving opioids that are so addictive with such long prescriptions. You should only have maybe 5 days at a time, except in extreme circumstances. There's definitely injuries where it's necessary, but things like mine over such a long time, I don't think that should be allowed. the whole discharge process needs to be much more involved and support given, especially for a medical discharge. You shouldn't even have to put in a claim to DVA. It should just automatically go over. I mean, the Army has all your paperwork. They know you've been injured. You are injured at work. It should just be transferred straight over. You shouldn't have to stop treatments, submit a claim, wait for support. It should just be a seamless process. DVA does need to be regulated like by a third party in the same way that workers' compensation does. I mean, if I got injured in another workplace, if my claim wasn't through in 10 days, it would automatically be approved and payment would be supplied. And I've waited several years for payments. And DVA, they don't cover any of the interest on loans you took for these bills. They don't inflation adjust the figures. And you're basically forced to give them an interest-free loan while you're paying the interest on it for several years. So, these are things that they need to really get on top of. Obviously, next of kin should be notified of any major injuries or medical incidents or diagnosis or anything like that. And the last one, more extreme types of training. We had a lot of people with us that are doing engineering degrees and this and that, and they don't need to be doing these 5-day food and sleep deprivation exercises, and they don't need to be doing these other forms of extreme training. So they shouldn't be forced to. They should definitely have the option if they want to, but they've already got a lot on their plate. Like like my degree had 12 contact hours. Some of the other guys had degrees with up to 36 contact hours of classwork plus our military training, and they're doing degrees that aren't going to put them in a combat role. So is it really necessary for them to do all of it to the extent that that a combat role would? The answer is probably no a lot of the time. So it shouldn't be forced on them. And the people that don't want to be there, they really suffer. You can tell they don't want to be there, and they are suffering the whole time.
Thank you, Mr. Geercke. I have one final question. In terms of the culture, including culture of silence, the abuse that you witnessed or may have even experienced, the punitive model that you describe is being used or was being used, I'm not sure if it's still being used there at ADFA now, but was definitely at the time you were there. Do you have any recommendations about the culture at ADFA and in the Army?
That's a complex issue, because it's not something you can just snap your fingers and change a whole culture. But I would say it would have to start at the top, and it would have to trickle down through there. There's definitely more supports that can be given. This whole thing of silence, my first sergeant that I had came off 5 back-to-back tours, and he was not okay. And he used to come into our rooms at night looking for alcohol and things like that. So, and that sort of then gets leaves an impression on us, and we start thinking things like, well, are we going to end up like this? Or, and he's not seeking any help. So we're learning from this guy, and, we're looking up to these people, because we're like, well, that guy, that guy's who we need to be if we want to be able to do this job. So we're looking and we're observing and we're learning from these people, but we're also picking up their problems at the same time, in a sense, and we're going to start coping with our problems the way we see them coping with theirs. So if nothing's happening there, and we just see him behaving in such ways, and we start to normalize that behavior, and you start to normalize the silence and normalize the self-harm and normalize all these negative things, that's where it's sort of, we need to turn that around big time.
Thank you. Commissioners, I have no further questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown?
Thank you very much for your evidence. I just had a couple of questions. You said that during the open day, you weren't informed about any of the challenges that you might face. Were there subsequent opportunities or times prior to actually starting at ADFA where the challenges that you could expect were discussed with you?
No, we sort of got exposed to some of the challenges at the beginning of ADFA. They would say, this is going to be difficult, you're going to have problems with this, but nothing before actually arriving there.
So before you signed on the dotted line, there was no discussion?
No.
Okay. And my other question was in relation to what you described as the constant stress and the constant demands, some of them which you, the charges, some of which you described as ridiculous, I think, was the word you used. I guess I found myself sitting here thinking, why would anyone go through that? And one potential answer is that there's some positives that might offset the negatives. So my question is, were there positives for you?
Yeah, I did really enjoy being in the army. We get to do a lot of fun stuff. You get to do things that you would never have in any normal experience of life. You know, and I loved getting out in the field, getting my hands dirty. You know, I don't like being stuck in the office behind the computer. And you do bond with people in a way that you're not going to bond in a normal workplace. So there are definitely those positives, or for me, those were definitely some of the positives. It was very challenging, but I did enjoy the work at the end of the day.
So if there was a young person speaking to you now, what would you say to them if they said they were thinking of joining the Defence
I tell
Force?
everyone that asks me not to join. I tell them it takes a bigger toll than you realise. It takes a bigger toll on you than than it's being portrayed to you. And even if you don't directly start experiencing some severe mental health problems, you're going to be around them. You're going to see them. You're going to see things happen to your friends. And all these things, you know, I only thought this would happen after going to war, but it really starts happening at some level, and quite badly in some circumstances from the very beginning. And I know a lot of people are joining the military because they don't have such a good life so far. Quite a few people are trying to get away from their home environment or go out into something a bit different. And for those people, they might not be going to the right place. It might not be what they need. They might need a bit more of help and support, and they're not going to get that in the way they need in the military.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Douglas?
I'm not sure if ADFA operated for the Navy when you were there as it does now, but I gather they require their students to spend up to a year in normal naval operations for starting at ADFA, and there's, I gather, a proposal or a possibility that might extend to the Army and the Air Force. From your experience, would that have assisted you if you'd had that exposure to the military life first?
It may have. So when the Navy people join us in our they're called divisions, what we sort of operate in at ADFA, they've already done a year in the Navy before they come to us. And
Yes, I understand.
yeah, and they definitely have a wealth more of experience than us at the beginning. So they've already learned a lot of things that we're still struggling to learn. They know all the ranks of every service. They know all that sort of stuff when we're trying to sort of get to grips with that on top of all the other stuff we're trying to do at the same time. And they did not seem as stressed out when they came to join us. And quite often they're going home on leave while we're going out to do training because they've already done that year in advance. So I can definitely see some advantages to doing things that way.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Geercke. I don't have any questions, but I do want to thank you for your evidence. Thank you for the thought.